everybody, I'm George Riles. I'm here at Last Chance Archery. It's time for another thing a week. So today I'm going to go over bar positions, why you would change the positions of your bars, and how the very unscientific way that I set my bar positions. But you'll see a little bit later, it'll make sense. But first, let me remind you that you can get lessons directly from me. If you go to improvemyarchery.com, you can look at my calendar, pick a day and a time that makes sense for you. It can be remote or in person there in Snellville, Georgia, Archery Learning Center. You can look at my calendar, pick a day and time that works, and I'll be there waiting for you. You can also send me a message and talk to me about putting on a weekend workshop at your archery shop or at your archery club, and I'll come and do a whole weekend for your closest friends. So get in contact with me. We'll talk about pricing and pick a date out for you. So here we go with stabilizer positions. Now, bar positions are also important and they have a pretty good purpose. So let me explain how that is. A lot of people will want to take these bar positions and they'll want to put their bar in a bench mounted vise that's kind of like a gimbal, and they want to make the bow perfectly balanced. That doesn't actually work, because as soon as you're holding the bow in your hand and you pull it back to full draw, the bow totally changes shape and changes its gravity. And this isn't really about balance. It's more about biased balance. And what I mean by that is, imagine if this bow was perfectly balanced on a nail. And then if I just bump the stabilizer, it'll readily move in any direction at all. So that would be really hard to hold steady, because you're trying to protect the balance in 360 degrees. So what we do is we take our bars and we'll just put an offset, from straight back, and put a little bit of an offset, and that puts a bias in it. So when you have a muscle tremor or a little gust of wind or anything like that that moves the bow, it wants to return right back to where it was. That frees up a whole lot of bandwidth for aiming and shooting your release and all of that stuff. So how much is enough? Well, the very unscientific way that I set my bar kind of goes like this. I see a lot of people, they have a big long bar on there, and then that makes it kind of unwieldy, and they're trying to put the bar against their body, and then they have to reach like this to set everything up, and their body is out of shooting position. So they're kind of making a form mistake, and raising the bow up and then changing your position in process of drawing is an inconsistency, or an opening for inconsistency. So I like to have my bow right here on my hip, so everything is right here ready. I can put my release on the string, I can look at it, make sure that it's right. Then I can tip it forward and make my arm normal to the bow, set my grip, I can see it, I can feel it, make sure that that's right. So then when I pick the bow up and pull it back, I can be very consistent, and my body is in a shooting position. So there's no variation between setup and follow through. So the cleaner you can be with that, the more accurate you're going to be. But again, this bar is kind of in the way, and I can't load my bow because it's up against my body here. Here's the unscientific way. I've got this bar set kind of loose. So then I will turn the bow until I can reach it to put an arrow in there without too much of a problem. So that sets my bar at about this wide. So that way I've got body clearance with the bar, and instead of, if I had this straight back, and when I'm at full draw, you see that's pretty close to my body. It's like you can stick a piece of paper in between that and my body. So if I was aiming downhill, it would be touching me, right? Let me snug this up again. I've made it loose, moving it around. Let me just get this in here. Okay. All right, so I got that. Well, it's kind of snug. But anyway, this bar will get caught in your shirt sleeve. It'll hit you up under the arm during your follow through, right? So having this out will help that miss during your follow through. When the bow tips forward, it'll miss your arm. And a little bit of a down angle, like so, will keep that out of my armpit. And if you're a world archery shooter, and this bar looks kind of close, your weight stack gets really close to your body. If you're shooting extreme downhill, it'll touch you. So the judges are also really particular to make sure that this bar isn't touching you. So if it's really close, the judges, I've seen them do it, they'll gather around behind you and they'll have this little confab behind you talking about, is the bar touching, is it not touching? They're trying to get the angle. And you don't want that kind of disruption when you're trying to shoot your game and you see the judges back there kind of talking about you and looking at your bars and all that. So just make sure you set it for obvious clearance so that you don't have to deal with that, right? You don't want the judges to stop your game and make you move your bars or, anything weird like that. So just make sure the clearance is obvious. There's another little thing that I love to do is I'll take my bow and set it down on, let me move this out of the way here. I'll set it down on the floor and then I'll change the angle, right, of the bar so that it's touching the floor. And then I'll tighten it up so that way when I'm shooting indoors, I don't have to use a bow stand. I can just set the bow down and have my bar hold it up so I don't have to do the whole take the bow stand out, take it off, put it away, pull it out, put it on, put it down. I don't have to do all that. I just set the bow down and just keep going, right? So that's how I set my bar angle and how far away it is. Now, if you're aiming and your aim looks like it's going tick-tock, tick-tock, back and forth like that, what that is that's your bow, right? Because most of the bows now, the arrow is the center of the bow. So you end up with your hand quite a bit below center, and you end up with a significant amount of metal above you. So you end up kind of protecting that balance in your bubbles going back and forth while you're trying to be steady. So having the bars lower on the bow will help. You see this one here, I'm currently experimenting. This is the new Concept X. And I have, instead of putting the bar in the normal position here, I actually have the bar down here in the bottom. I'm experimenting with putting the weight down at the bottom to kind of help. But also, if it's tick-tocking back and forth, that means you don't have enough bias in the bar. It's too balanced vertically. So by opening that up, you can just a couple of degrees, just barely move it open, and you'll see that tick-tock aiming pattern go away. If you use something like a mantis or a steady aim or something like that, and you see this kind of pattern, try opening up your bar and see if that will go away. So having a little bias will help you be a lot more steady. And there's another thing I see a lot is the down angle in a bow. So guys will use this bracket here. This is from Last Chance Archery. And this has several different angles. It goes from 0, which is straight out. Let's see. It goes from 0, which is straight out, so like this, right? And it'll go in 5-degree increments to 20 degrees. So you see the difference right there, right? So that either one of these, you can have it sticking straight out. And if you have, say, a 28-inch bar, and you move this down, people say that it makes them more steady because of the pendulum effect, because the weight is below. But what's really happening is you're shortening the working length of the bar when you go to the down angle. So at 20 degrees with a 28-inch bar, you're just a little bit over 26 inches of working length. So by shortening the bar, you make it aim a little faster. So if it bobbles off, it comes back much quicker. So some people like that down angle because it gets that weight out of their peripheral vision. Some people like the idea of tipping it down. It shortens the working length and makes them feel more steady. There's all sorts of reasons that you may want to change the angle, and this one's adjustable through a 5-degree, incremental range from 0 to 20. So effectively what's happening is you're shortening your bar. So you can go from 28 to 26 with a down angle. There's also one more thing that you can do with a down angle. When you're aiming, let me try to do this with my bow. My bracket is pretty loose, so I'm going to take a split second and just snug this up. All right. All right. So if I have this bar off center, and then I aim uphill. If I aim uphill with a loose grip, this bar will want to point straight down. So it basically changes my third axis, which will make me miss right or left, depending on whether if I'm shooting uphill or downhill. So what you can do with your down angle is you can rotate that slightly off center so you can offset that weight. So when it wants to tip over, you can create a balance left-right so that it doesn't want to do that. Another form thing is from the Big Four. One of the things, some of the early videos that we've done this year, is when you put your hand in the bow and you do a light pinch between your thumb and forefinger like this. You can use a light pinch and that'll keep the bow straight and on target. Or you can offset that down angle to create a left-right balance so you can shoot a loose grip and just let the bow move. I prefer to use the light pinch because ultimately that's more accurate. But that's two ways that you can do that and a really cool use for your down angle bar. So next week, I'm going to go through a couple of hunting bow things like differences in stabilization and different ways that people do that and kind of explain a few of those things. So I will see you next week for hunting bow stabilization.